Story 1.
Story 1. The extra key. The night shift feels safer. I've always preferred nights. People hear that and assume I'm chasing something dark, but it's the opposite. Nights are predictable. The lobby stays quiet. The phones barely ring. And the only real emergencies are a clogged toilet or someone who can't figure out the TV remote. I work the front desk as the night auditor at a small roadside hotel off the highway. 2 floors, 40 rooms, a vending machine that eats bills, and a coffee station I clean more out of habit than necessity. Most weekdays were half empty. On a good night, I'll check in one late traveler, print the reports at 2 a.m., and spend the rest of the shift watching the security monitors and scrolling on my phone. There's comfort in that routine. When you're alone behind a locked desk with a clear view of the doors, you feel in control. I know the sounds the building makes. I know which hallway light flickers. I know the guy in 214 leaves at 5:30 every morning and never says a word. That's why I noticed the first tiny thing that didn't fit. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms. No shouting. Just a room key blank white, freshly coated sitting on the counter where it shouldn't have been. And at the time, I was sure it was my mistake. The first small inconsistency, it happened around 12:40 a.m., right when the lobby usually goes completely still. A guy from room 118 came down in sweatpants and slides, looking more annoyed than scared. He said someone had just tried to open his door, not knocking, not jiggling the handle. The actual electronic lock had beeped like it does when a keycard scans. I asked if he was sure it wasn't just someone walking past and brushing it by accident. He shook his head. It unlocked halfway. Like it turned green. That part made me pause. I pulled up the keycard system on the computer behind the desk. Every card issued gets log time, date, room number. Room 118 had 2 active keys. Both were issued at check-in earlier that evening. No duplicates. No master key override. No failed attempts either. I even checked the hallway cameras. The angle doesn't show the doors directly, just the corridor. At 12:36 a.m., no one walks past 118. The hallway stays empty. I told him it might have been a system glitch. The locks are old. Sometimes they flash weird colors when batteries get low. He didn't look convinced, but he also didn't push it. He went back upstairs. I sat there for a minute longer than usual, staring at the access log. No extra key created. No recorded scan. If someone had tried his door, the system would have logged it. That's how it works. Around 1:05 a.m., I reset the front desk key encoder, just in case. Then I went back to scrolling, telling myself that if something had really happened, there would have been proof. It happens again. The second complaint came 2 nights later. Different guest, different floor. This time it was a woman in her 30s from room 207. She didn't come down to the lobby. She called from her room phone, voice tight but controlled. She said someone had tried to use a key card on her door about 5 minutes earlier. It had flashed green. She was sure of it, and she'd heard the latch shift before it stopped. I remember feeling a flicker of irritation before anything else. Not at the situation. 2 similar complaints in 1 week made us look incompetent. I pulled up the system again. Room 207 had 2 keys issued at check-in. No duplicates. No master key usage. No failed scans logged at the time she mentioned. I even checked the master access history, which requires my login. Nothing. Are you sure it wasn't someone in the hallway? I asked gently. She hesitated. I looked through the peephole right after. Someone was standing there. That made me sit up straighter. I switched to the camera feed for the second floor hallway and rewound to the timestamp she gave me. At first it looked empty. Then, at 1:17 a.m., a figure stepped into frame and stopped directly outside 207. They just stood there. No knocking. No visible phone. No attempt to hide. The camera angle caught the side of their body, but their face was turned slightly away. Hoodie up, hands down at their sides. They didn't move for almost 20 seconds. Then they stepped backward. Out of frame. No attempt shows in the key log. No door scan recorded. And that's when I felt something shift, not fear exactly. Just the uncomfortable sense that something wasn't lining up. The key log doesn't lie after the second complaint. I stopped treating it like a coincidence. Around 2:30 a.m., when the building settles into that heavy silence. I logged back into the key system and pulled up the deeper access reports. Not the basic guest log, the administrative history, the part most employees never bother checking. Every master key swipe is recorded. Housekeeping, maintenance, management. It's all timestamped. At first glance, nothing looked unusual. Just routine entries from earlier shifts. Then I filtered by overnight hours. That's when I saw it. A master key had been used at 12:36 a.m. 2 nights ago. Room 180, and again at 1:17 a.m. tonight. Room 207. Both times matched the complaints, almost exactly. My stomach tightened. I scrolled sideways to see which master key ID it was. It was listed as front desk override. That's my login. I checked the security settings. The system only allows a master key to be encoded using an active desk login. Mine was the only one signed in during those hours, but I never made a master key. I don't even keep one behind the desk unless there's a maintenance issue. I replayed my shift in my head. Both nights, around those exact times, I had stepped into the back hallway to restock towels. It takes maybe 3 minutes. The desk is technically unattended, but the office door is closed. Anyone would have to know that? I pulled up the lobby camera and scrubbed through the footage from those windows. At 12:34 a.m. 2 nights ago, I see myself walking toward the supply closet. At 12:35, the desk sits empty. The angle doesn't show the key encoder directly, just the counter. No one walks in through the main doors. No one comes from the stairwell, nothing. Yet at 12:36, a master key was created using my credentials and used upstairs. That's when it stopped feeling like a system glitch. If the log was right and the log doesn't lie, someone wasn't just trying doors. Someone knew exactly when I stepped away. The personal violation, I didn't tell management right away. I told myself I needed one more piece of proof. Something concrete. Something that wasn't just numbers on a screen and hallway footage with no face. Around 3 a.m., I went to the back to grab my hoodie. The air in the lobby always gets colder toward morning, and I keep a spare in my staff locker so I don't have to carry it back and forth. The supply hallway is narrow, fluorescent lights. No cameras back there, just the break table, the lockers, and the housekeeping carts lined up against the wall. I opened my locker and stopped. My hoodie was folded differently. That sounds small. I know it does, but I'm particular about how I fold it. Sleeves tucked in, hood flat. I've done it the same way for months. Now it was unfolded, sleeves hanging loose. Like someone had picked it up and put it back without caring how it looked. I stared at it longer than I should have. I checked the pockets. Nothing missing. My spare charger's still there. A $5 bill I forgot about. Everything exactly where it should be. But the fabric felt disturbed, not messy. Just handled. I looked around the hallway like I expected someone to still be there. The office door was closed. The exit alarm hadn't gone off. The lobby was visible through the small window in the door empty. No sign of forced entry. No sign of theft. Just contact, and that's when something shifted inside me. Up until that moment, this had been about rooms, guests, logs, technical problems. This was different. Whoever used that master key didn't just know when I stepped away from the desk. They knew where my locker was. They knew which one was mine. And they'd opened it without taking anything, which meant they didn't need something from me. They just wanted me to know they'd been there. Contained chaos, I didn't call anyone. I went back to the desk, sat down, and forced myself to act normal. If someone was watching, I didn't want them to see me panic. I kept the monitor angled slightly toward me and left the access log open. At 3:12 a.m., a new entry appeared. Master key attempt. Room 214. 214 was empty. No guest assigned. My throat went dry. I pulled up the second floor camera immediately. The hallway came into view, grainy and too quiet. There they were standing outside 214, not moving, just facing the door. 20 seconds passed, 30. Then, slowly, they turned their head, not toward the room, toward the camera at the end of the hall. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to know they were looking straight into it, straight at me. They didn't wave, didn't rush, just stood there knowing I could see them. The feed glitched for half a second. When it stabilized, the hallway was empty. I finished my shift. I didn't mention it to the morning clerk. And the master key entry was still in the log. Story 2. Cheap apartment, thin walls. I moved into that apartment because it was cheap. That's really it. It was the kind of place you pick when tuition is due, your part-time job barely covers groceries, and luxury means the water gets hot eventually. Second floor, exterior hallway, thin beige carpet that had probably seen 3 generations of students before me. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors sneeze. The guy below me played bass-heavy music at random hours. Someone across the courtyard smoked constantly, and the smell drifted in if I left my window cracked. None of it bothered me much. It felt normal. Predictable chaos. I'm used to being up late. Most nights I'd stay awake studying or gaming with headphones on until 2 or 3 in the morning. The complex would go quiet after midnight. Not silent, just distant traffic and the occasional door shutting somewhere. There's a shared dumpster at the end of the lot. Everyone drags their trash down there whenever they remember. No trash chute, no valet service. Just you in a tied-up bag walking across cracked pavement under bad lighting. It started with one of those walks. I took a bag down around 1:30 a.m. after cleaning my kitchen. The next morning, it was sitting outside my door. The trash reappears at first. I thought I'd just been careless. The bag was the same white kitchen trash bag I always use, tied in a tight double knot. It was sitting upright, leaning against the wall next to my door, like someone had set it down carefully. I stared at it for a second, trying to remember if I'd gotten distracted the night before and left it outside, instead of walking it all the way to the dumpster. But I clearly remembered the cold air in the parking lot, the flickering light above the dumpster, the sound it made when I tossed the bag in. Still, I figured maybe it hadn't gone in all the way. Maybe someone moving their own trash had pulled it out accidentally and assumed it belonged to the nearest unit mine. I picked it up. The knot was still tight. No tears. No obvious signs that it had been opened. I didn't overthink it. I carried it back down and made sure it went all the way into the dumpster this time. 2 nights later, it had happened again. Same routine. Late night. Full bag, walk to the dumpster. Toss. The next morning, it was back, leaning against my door. Same knot, same bag. That's when it stopped feeling like a coincidence. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't dramatic. It was just wrong in a quiet way. And the part that stuck with me wasn't that someone moved it. It was how neatly they placed it back. The pattern and the timing. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. The complex had over 100 units. People were up at weird hours. Maybe someone thought they were doing me a favor by returning a bag they assumed I'd dropped. But after the 3rd time, I started paying attention to when it happened. It only reappeared on nights I stayed up late. Not evenings when I took trash out before 10. Not afternoons. Only the nights when my lights were still on at 2 or 3 in the morning, when my headset was on. I was mid-game. When anyone walking past my window would know I was awake. The next time it happened, I didn't move the bag right away. I crouched down and looked at the knot. It wasn't mine. I tie my bags tight and small, looping the plastic into itself twice. This one was bulkier, twisted differently. Still secure, but not how I do it. I felt that shift again, that quiet internal click when something stops being random. If someone had just pulled it from the dumpster and set it outside my door, why retie it? Unless they'd opened it. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to the hallway. No footsteps, no doors opening. Just the hum of the old light fixture above me. The timing wasn't accidental. Whoever was doing this knew when I was awake. And more importantly, knew when I wasn't. That's when it stopped being about trash. It became about someone watching my routine close enough to notice patterns I hadn't even thought about. The note inside the 4th time it came back, I didn't carry it downstairs. I dragged it inside and locked the door. I told myself I was being dramatic, but my hands were already moving before I could talk myself out of it. I set the bag in the middle of my kitchen floor and just stood there, staring at it like it might react. It looked normal. Same white plastic. Same faint smell of coffee grounds and leftovers. I untied the knot slowly. The smell hit first. Nothing unusual. Just old food and paper towels. Then I noticed something small. The empty ramen cup I'd thrown away the night before wasn't there. I remembered tossing it in. I even remembered rinsing it out halfway because I hate when it drips. I started shifting things around carefully, trying not to tear the bag. That's when I saw the yellow square. A sticky note folded once, tucked between two crumpled soda cans. I pulled it out. Three words written in blocky black ink. You should sleep earlier. That was it. No smiley face, no name, no explanation. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion. I actually checked the handwriting. Like, I might recognize it. Like, maybe a friend had come by and thought this was funny. But I live alone. No one has my key. And even if someone did, why go through the trash? I looked back at the bag, at the empty space where the ramen cup should have been. They hadn't taken anything valuable. They'd taken something meaningless and replaced it with a message about my schedule, about when I'm awake, which meant they weren't just noticing my routine, they were correcting it. I stood in my kitchen longer than I cared to admit, holding that note, trying to decide what felt worse. The idea that someone had opened my trash, or the fact that they'd taken the time to write something back. Spiral and self-doubt, I didn't call the police. I walked downstairs the next afternoon and asked my neighbors if they'd seen anyone messing with trash near the dumpster. I tried to sound casual about it, like I'd misplaced something important and was hoping someone had grabbed the wrong bag by mistake. Most of them just shrugged. One guy laughed and said, "Man, this place is weird enough already." I had told the landlord. He barely looked up from his phone. Said maybe raccoons dragged it back and someone set it by my door thinking it was mine. When I mentioned the note, he frowned for a second, then said it was probably a prank. A student thing, he called it. That response bothered me more than I expected. That night, I ordered a cheap motion-activated door camera online and installed it above my frame. It wasn't fancy. Just enough to record a few seconds of footage when someone passed by. 2 nights later, I stayed up on purpose. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I didn't open it right away. I don't know why. Maybe part of me didn't want confirmation. When I finally pressed play, the video loaded in black and white. The hallway light hummed faintly in the background. Then someone stepped into frame. Hood up, face covered with what looked like a plain mask. No logos, no identifying marks. They were holding my trash bag. They didn't rush. They didn't look around nervously. They set the bag down gently beside my door. Then they stood there, not moving, just facing my door. The camera angle didn't catch their eyes, but their posture felt patient. After a few seconds, they stepped back out of frame. No sound, no door closing nearby, just silence. I replayed it 3 times. Surveillance confirmed. Identity unknown. The final escalation. A week went by without anything happening. No return trash. No notes. No motion alerts at 3 a.m. I almost convinced myself they'd gotten bored. Then one night, after studying at the library, I came home around midnight. The hallway was empty. My camera hadn't triggered. Everything looked normal. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and reached for the light. That's when I saw it. My trash bag was sitting in the middle of my kitchen floor. Not ripped. Not scattered. Neatly folded. The plastic smoothed down, handles tucked in, like someone had taken their time with it, cleaner than I ever leave it. For a second, I genuinely thought I was losing track of my own memory. Maybe I'd taken it out earlier and forgotten. Maybe I'd left it there before leaving. But I always keep trash by the sink. Always. There was no sign of forced entry. The lock wasn't damaged. Windows closed. Nothing missing from the counters or shelves. Just the bag. Moved from wherever I'd left it and placed deliberately where I would see it the second I walked in. They hadn't needed to break in. They already knew how. I moved out 3 weeks later when my lease ended. I never figured out who it was. But I still don't stay up as late anymore. Story 3. The car that waited. Same route every night. I worked the late shift at a distribution warehouse outside town. Nothing dramatic, just loading manifests, scanning pallets, making sure trucks leave on schedule. My shift ends at 1:45 a.m., which means I'm usually pulling out of the parking lot a little after 2. The drive home takes 15 minutes if I hit the lights right. There's one long industrial stretch, then a 2-lane road that cuts through a quiet residential area before I reach my apartment complex. At that hour, the streets are mostly empty. A few delivery trucks, maybe a tired nurse heading home. It's predictable. I like predictable. About a month ago, I started noticing a car parked at the same four-way intersection halfway through my route. It sat just past the stop sign, pulled over along the curb. First night, I barely registered it. People pull over to check their phones all the time. Second night, it was there again. Same spot. Third night, same position. Headlights off. Engine dark. Just a silhouette under the street lamp. I remember thinking it was odd but not threatening. It didn't move when I passed. Didn't flash lights. Didn't follow. Still, 3 nights in a row felt like more than coincidence, and once I noticed it, I couldn't stop looking for it. The headlights flick on the fourth night. I slowed down a little before the intersection. I told myself I just wanted to confirm the license plate. Prove to myself it was the same car and not my brain filling in details. It was there. Same curb. Same angle. Dark body color. Maybe gray or dark blue. Hard to tell under the streetlight. As I rolled through the intersection, the headlights flicked on. Not gradually. Not like someone starting their engine and waiting. They snapped on the exact moment my car passed the stop sign. Bright enough to hit my side mirror. I checked my rear view instinctively. The car didn't move. It just sat there, headlights on now, pointed toward the road. I drove the rest of the way home with that dull awareness in my chest, the kind you get when something doesn't make sense, but hasn't crossed into danger yet. The next shift, I almost convinced myself it wouldn't happen again. It did. Same intersection. Same parked car. This time I didn't slow down. As soon as my front bumper cleared the stop line, the headlights switched on. Again. Perfect timing. But the car didn't pull out, didn't follow, didn't even inch forward. It just illuminated the empty road behind me. That repetition was what got to me. Once is strange, twice is intentional. And by the sixth night, I realized something else. The headlights weren't reacting to traffic. They were reacting to me. It starts moving the first time it pulled out. I almost missed it. I drove through the intersection like usual, trying to keep my breathing steady, pretending I wasn't watching my mirrors more than the road ahead. The headlights came on. Then, a second later, the car eased away from the curb. Not fast, not aggressive. Just a slow, deliberate roll into the lane behind me. I felt it before I processed it. That tightness in my shoulders, the quiet shift from discomfort to alertness. It stayed back, a steady distance, far enough that it didn't feel like tailgating, but close enough that I could see the twin beams in my rearview mirror. I told myself we were just headed the same direction. The road curved slightly after the intersection. Most drivers keep going straight toward the highway. I take the right turn toward the residential stretch. So did the car. My stomach dropped a little. Still, that wasn't proof. Plenty of people live out that way. I drove at the speed limit, didn't brake check, didn't accelerate. The car matched me. At the next stop sign, I made a left instead of my usual right. The headlights paused for half a second behind me. Then the car turned left too. That's when the air inside my car felt thinner. It never tried to overtake me. Never closed the gap aggressively. Just held position, steady and patient. 2 blocks before my apartment complex, I made another turn. This time, when I glanced in the mirror, the road behind me was empty. No headlights, no car. Like it had never been there at all. I drove home faster than usual. And I didn't sleep much before my next shift. The test the next night, I decided I needed to know, not guess. Not assume. No. I left work at the same time, drove toward the intersection like usual. The car was there, parked under the streetlight. Headlights off, waiting. I didn't slow down this time. As soon as I crossed the stop line, the headlights came on, right on cue. Instead of taking my normal route, I went straight past the residential turn and headed toward the highway entrance. I never go that way home. It adds at least 10 minutes. The car pulled out behind me. I merged onto the highway, staying in the right lane. The road was almost empty at that hour. No traffic to hide behind. The headlights stayed 2 car lengths back. At the first exit, I signaled late and took it at the last second. The car took it too. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel now. I made a right at the bottom of the ramp. So did they. Left at the next light. Same. I started turning randomly after that. No pattern. No logic. A right onto a street that dead-ended into a cul-de-sac. I looped around, came back out. The car waited at the entrance while I circled. Then it curled back in behind me again. It wasn't aggressive. That was the worst part. No honking, no speeding, no attempt to block me. Just steady, controlled following. By the time I circled back toward my original neighborhood, my heart was pounding hard enough I could hear it in my ears. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't shared direction. They were matching me. And they were careful not to make it obvious enough to justify calling someone. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I didn't see the car behind me. But I didn't feel relieved, because now I knew they could follow me anywhere. The personal realization: I have a dash cam mostly for insurance reasons. It loops automatically and deletes old footage after a few days, unless I save it. The morning after the test drive, I sat in my car before work and started scrolling back through previous nights. At first, I was just looking for confirmation that it had started recently. It hadn't. 3 weeks ago, the car was already there at the intersection, but that wasn't the part that made my stomach drop. 4 weeks ago, I spotted it in a different place. Parked on the shoulder about half a mile before the intersection. Farther back along the industrial stretch near my warehouse. Headlights off. Engine dark. If I hadn't been scrubbing through frame by frame, I would have missed it completely. On another night, it was parked in a side lot across from a closed gas station I passed right after leaving work. Same silhouette, same shape. That meant the intersection wasn't random. It was a checkpoint. They weren't just waiting for traffic. They were waiting for me to leave. I checked timestamps. Some nights, the car was already positioned before I clocked out. Just sitting there, engine off, facing the road. As if the driver knew my shift ended around the same time every night. Which meant they'd either watched me long enough to learn my schedule, or they'd been closer than I realized. I zoomed in on one clip from 2 weeks back. The car was parked along the curb outside the warehouse exit, not directly in front. Slightly down the street where employees sometimes park when the lot fills up. It blended in. If I hadn't been looking for it, I never would have noticed. This wasn't someone who happened to be driving the same route. This was someone mapping mine. And the part I couldn't shake was how patient they'd been. They hadn't rushed it. They'd just waited. Night after night. Contained chaos and open loop. The night it wasn't there, I almost laughed. I drove toward the intersection, bracing myself. Already scanning for that familiar shape under the streetlight. Nothing. Empty curb. Dark pavement. No silhouette waiting. I slowed down anyway, just to be sure. Still nothing. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders dropped. I even checked my mirrors twice as I drove through, half expecting headlights to flare on behind me. The road stayed empty. Maybe they'd gotten bored. Maybe they'd moved on. Maybe I'd imagined the pattern into something bigger than it was. By the time I turned into my apartment complex, I was almost calm. The lot was dim, same as always. A few scattered cars. One flickering light near the dumpster. I pulled into my usual spot and shifted into park. That's when the headlights came on. Not behind me. Not on the street. From inside the parking lot, directly across from my car. Bright beams cutting through my windshield. Engine already running. I hadn't seen it when I turned in. The car just sat there, idling, facing me, waiting. I didn't move. And neither did it.